beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are having an amazing, marvelous, and magnificent day or night. My name is TatiV, and if you're a true crime lover like me, please don't forget to like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you're a fan of true crime and ASMR combined. I try my best to upload twice a week, Mondays and Fridays. So shout out to my first comment winner, Violet Fem. Thank you. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but thank you so much for being the first comment winner. If you would like to be the first comment winner and featured in my next video, comment down below being the first one, and you will be featured in my next video. So let's go ahead and get straight into the video. I don't like to do the intros long. Sit back, relax, grab a snack, some water, some wine, a blanket, popcorn, anything that fills your needs, warms your little heart, and enjoy some crime time. Warning, this video may contain details of graphic content. This channel is for mature audiences only. Some viewers might find this disturbing. Okanogan County, interesting word, was the largest county in the Washington state, lying at the upper middle of the state along the Canadian border. In the center of the county was the town of Tonasket, with less than 1,000 residents. Not much happened in the tiny town, let alone the nearby Aeneas Valley that stretches for miles in each direction around it. About 15 miles from Tonasket, Dana Davis lived in a small rural home with her 4 children. Though the home had no running water, no telephone, and only a generator for power, 9-year-old Penny Davis loved that it sat near the banks of Patterson Creek, where she liked to explore. In the late afternoon of September 17th, 1994, Penny had been playing along the river with her 7-year-old brother. Later that evening, when the young boy came back home without his sister, Dana became worried. The boy told his mother that Penny had just walked off and didn't come back. Dana searched the area up and down Patterson Creek for hours on horseback, but there was no sign of her. By midnight, she had lost hope of finding her daughter without help and drove the 15 miles into town to report her missing. Penny had simply disappeared without a trace. By morning, a full-scale search was underway. Penny was a tiny girl with blonde hair, blue hazel eyes, and a small scar on her right knee. She had been wearing a flowery white t-shirt and purple stretch pants with bright yellow stripes. Police, firefighters, ambulance members, and sniffer dogs searched the area with the local townspeople for days with no clues whatsoever. Dana remembered that Penny had once skipped school with another girl from Tonasket, but when police checked with the other girl's family, no one had heard from her. Police initially assumed that Penny had just lost her way, and they would eventually find her along the creek bed. But as the days went by and there was still no sign of her, it became clear that someone had abducted her. Among the townspeople assisting with the search was 24-year-old Jack Spellman. Spellman had dated Dana Davis off and on over the past 2 years and lived with the Davis family for a while. When Penny went missing, he was living about 8 miles away. I hope he didn't have nothing to do with this. Although he had grown up in Tonasket, he had dropped out of high school in the 9th grade and was known to move around repeatedly, staying with whoever could lend him a ride. on Patterson Creek Road near the Davis home. When asked what he was doing that night, he told police that he had heard Benny was missing and had been helping with the search. Within a few days, Spillman had become police's prime suspect after they looked at his prior criminal record. Oh Lord, it's not looking good for him. Among his offenses were burglary, theft, assault, and malicious mischief convictions. However, what concerned detectives the most was his arrest for the R word, RAPE, just 1 year earlier. Spillman and another local offered a woman a ride home from a bar. Oh my God. So they put a picture in the book and I recognize him. I don't know him personally, but I've heard of this case. He did it. Once they got her alone, his friend ordered her while Spillman held her down. So sick. The woman escaped before Spillman had a chance to take his turn, inappropriately touching her, and she reported the attack. Both men were arrested and charged, but she later dropped the charges. Police questioned Spillman about his whereabouts. When Benny went missing, he claimed he was at a house party. Detectives spoke to other attendees that confirmed he was indeed at the party, but had left for several hours. Around 5 p.m. When he returned, his clothes were covered with mud. Nothing about Spillman's story seemed to hold up, but they lacked any evidence to convict him and kept him under constant surveillance for several months. 6 months later, in March 1995, 2 hikers alerted the Okanogan County Sheriff's Department when they found what they thought to be part of a human jawbone in McLaughlin Canyon, just 12 miles from where Benny Davis was last seen. When detectives arrived at the remote location, they found a shallow grave. Buried just a foot below the ground was the body of a young girl. Though the level of decomposition kept the medical examiner from determining a cause of death, DNA evidence later confirmed it was the body of Benny Davis. Her body had been disemboweled. She had been cut open from her private area to her chest, revealing the organs inside. Bruh, can you imagine being a detective or being on the scene and seeing that? And then on top of that, it's a minor, a little girl. I would lose it. The body was posed nude inside the shallow grave with the legs spread. By analyzing insect activity around the body, they could tell that the grave they found her in was not the murder scene, nor her original resting place. She had been buried somewhere for at least 2 weeks before she was moved and reburied in McLaughlin Canyon. So they just threw this poor baby out like trash. Like freaking trash. They knew this because the jawbone had been found outside of the grave. Oh my God. The person moving the body was unaware it had fallen off. It would have taken at least 2 weeks of decomposition for the jawbone to have fallen away from the skull that easily. Police had been watching Spillman in the months prior, but just before Benny's body had been found, he had moved 2 hours south to Wenatchee, Washington. Why do these cities have the weirdest, most hardest names to pronounce? So he's probably about to kill somebody else because they freaking didn't do their job and notify the other county of what he was capable of. This is how people turn into serial killers, because they continue to get away with it. Anyway, I digress. Police informed Dana Davis that out of over 100 potential suspects, all had been eliminated except for Jack Spillman. Although they had no evidence to convict him, he was their primary suspect. They also told her of his criminal past and his prior R-word accusations, but she still stood by him. Lord Jesus, these women, the red flags are there. It's up to you to listen. Police literally told Dana Davis, which is Penny's mother, about his prior convictions and his R accusations, and she still proceeds to ignore those red flags and date him. Not only that, bring this man around her kids. Let's continue. Quote, Jack is the kind of person who will walk away from an argument. That's not the kind of person that would brutally kill somebody, end quote. In Wichita, when Spillman heard the news of Penny's body being found, he flew into an insane rage. He broke into the apartment of a woman that he knew lived with a young daughter. He'd had his eye on them for a while. While the family wasn't home, he broke into their house, took the young daughter's pet hamster, and mutilated it with a butcher's knife from the kitchen. Then, with the bloody hamster in his hands, he spun around in a circle, squeezing the hamster and spraying its blood all over the walls. He's not done yet, y'all. He then took the bloody butcher's knife, stabbed it into the head of a stuffed panda bear, and left the house. Since Spillman had moved to Wenatchee, the local police received numerous reports of local women being taunted and terrorized. The reports range from obscene phone calls to attempted R-word. On one occasion, a woman called police and couldn't stop shaking because she was so terrified. In the middle of the night, Spillman had knocked on her front door, then ran around to the back door and knocked again. He then ran to the sides of the house and knocked all over the outside walls while she was alone in the house. When she walked outside to the side of her house, Spillman attacked her. Why would you go outside? I'm sorry. He finally ran away when she kicked him in the groin and tore off a piece of his clothing. As Spillman ran, he called her by her name and yelled, quote, "I'll be back," end quote. And he probably came back. On another occasion, as he was working as a roofer, Spillman would sit on the roof watching young girls below. One homeowner that was having their home remodeled found the family cat dismembered inside the home. In a similar fashion as the hamster, it was later discovered that Spillman was responsible for that carnage as well. However, he ultimately had sadistic plans for more than just animals. Ever since his arrival in Wenatchee, Spillman had been watching someone specific. He had his eye on 14-year-old Mandy Huffman. Mandy is what she went by. Amanda lived with her mother, 48-year-old Rita Huffman. Spillman first encountered Rita at the Igloo Tavern in East Wenatchee. She was walking through the bar toward a payphone when Spillman grabbed her arm and they had a brief exchange of words. It's unclear what was said, was obvious that something had pissed him off. He stormed out of the bar immediately afterwards without finishing his beer. In the days after, Spillman creepily drove through the Huffman's neighborhood in his truck, watching Rita and her daughter. He sat in the bleachers at Amanda's softball games as she practiced after school. He watched both of them methodically for months before he made his move. Once again, he's out on the prowl. On the evening of April 12, 1995, Rita's adult daughter, Angie Zimmerman, had tried several times to call her mother, but got no answer. The next morning, she tried again, but there was still no answer. Angie drove to her mother's house in the late morning and tried the front door, but it was locked. There was no answer when she knocked, knowing that her mother always kept the back sliding door unlocked. Okay. She entered the home from the back. When Angie walked in through the rear of the house, she went to her mother's bedroom to see if she was still asleep. What she found was an unimaginable bloodbath. Amanda's body was sprawled out on the bed, nude with her legs spread. A baseball bat had been shoved 16 inches into her private area. Like Penny, she had been... Okay. The skin surrounding her... Oh my God, Jesus. On the bedside table was a woman's breast, not Amanda's. Another was on the chest of drawers. Angie was in shock and found herself unable to breathe. I wouldn't have been able to breathe either. Out looking for her mother, she ran from the house and into the street, screaming in terror. Unsure of what had happened, neighbors immediately called the police. When police arrived to the scene, it was unlike anything they had ever seen. Douglas County Sheriff Dan LaRoche, later told the media, quote, "There's evidence of sexual mutilation, but I don't know if there's been any SA. This is worse than any case we've ever had. All I can say is that there was a very violent trauma. There doesn't appear to be evidence of a struggle or forced injury, but our visual search has been real brief. We just don't want to contaminate any blood or hair fibers that might be at the scene," end quote. The body of Amanda's mother, Rita Huffman, was sprawled on the couch in the living room. Her nightgown had been ripped off and she had been cut as well. Both of her breasts had been cut off, and she had 31 stab wounds on her chest, arms, legs, back, and neck. Oh God, Jesus. The skin around her vagina had been removed and shoved into her mouth. This has to be the worst case. The worst one. What? Oh my God. Rita still wore a broken wristwatch, which had stopped at 11:35 p.m. The detectives assumed the watch had been broken defending the knife attack and stopped at that time. It was later determined that the removal of her organs and skin was done post-mortem after they were already dead. The killer has spent hours in the home with the bodies after death. Rita died from her massive stab wounds, and Amanda had died from a blow to the side of her head. At 2 a.m. that morning, before the bodies bodies had been found. Jack Spillman had been parked near a dumpster in the parking lot of a VFW hall when a police car approached him. As the officer approached Spillman, he raised his hands, but at the time, the officer was unaware that a murder had occurred just around the corner. Suspecting that he might be a burglar, the officer questioned him and let him go. Let him go, y'all. The next day, when detectives realized Spillman had been so close to the murder scene just hours after it occurred, they immediately took notice. Wow, now you guys are noticing. Returning to the dumpster, detectives found a kitchen knife wedged in the bottom. The knife was covered in blood that matched the victim's. It also matched a set of knives from the kitchen of the Huffman home. Police then spoke to a neighbor that saw a black truck, which matched the description of Spillman's, parked in the nearby elementary school parking lot around 11 p.m. on the evening of the murder. The parking lot was in clear view of the back sliding door of the Huffman's home. Jack Spillman was put under 24-hour surveillance for 2 weeks while detectives gathered more evidence. When police watched him put more items into a dumpster near his house, they confiscated the entire dumpster and brought it back to the sheriff's office. Inside, they found a bloody ski mask that matched the DNA of Rita and Amanda, as well as his own. The blood of both victims was located around the mouth of the mask. Police later learned that he had drunk their blood during his rampage. 2 weeks after the murders, Jack Spillman was arrested. Police searched his home and truck and learned that he had left the gloves and clothes he was wearing during the killings on the seat of his truck. He had worn surgical gowns over his clothes during the killings and taped the gowns to his gloves and socks in hopes that he wouldn't leave any hair, fibers, or trace evidence at the scene. Fibers from the surgical gowns found at his home, however, were matched to the fibers found at the scene. While incarcerated in Washington State Penitentiary at Walla Walla, Spillman boasted of his crimes and told his cellmate Mark Miller horrifying details about the murders and his plans to become the, quote, world's greatest serial killer. Spillman had read of serial killers extensively and continued to read about them in the prison library. Wow, they just have serial killer books in the prison library. He told Miller of how he had taped the surgical gowns to his socks and gloves and said in the future he would shave his entire body as well so he wouldn't leave any trace of evidence. He went on to explain that with future murders he planned to remove the bed linens and burn them or burn the whole house down if necessary. I'm getting goosebumps, y'all. He explained that he knocked his victims out with a baseball bat before violating and dismembering them. That explained the blunt force trauma to Amanda's skull that killed her. He told Miller that his ultimate sexual fantasy was to be anally sodomized by a large... Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, moving on. He also told of his fantasies of... Okay, y'all, I'm just going to skip all of this because... He went on to explain that Penny Davis was not his intended target and he had wanted to abduct and kill her 13-year-old friend, but the girl was able to get away from him. So he took Penny instead. He threw her over his shoulder so as to not leave her footprints and eventually tied her to a tree. He was sexually aroused by torturing her, but when he stabbed her in the stomach, he was disappointed because she died almost immediately after. Okay, I'm skipping that. Spillman's trial had been set for August 1986, and prosecutors planned to seek the death penalty, but in order to avoid the death penalty, the death sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an extra 116 years. That was the ending of the craziest story I've ever read in this book. That one tops the case. Tops the cake. Let me know you guys' opinions down below, and thank you for watching the video. I'm so creeped out. Oh my god. I have goosebumps. Stay safe, stay blessed, and I'll catch you in my next video.